One thing my group studies is we use genetics to better understand Florida panthers. And Florida panthers are a really unique organism here in Florida because they're isolated from all these other panther populations in the rest of the country. And they got really inbred many years ago. So about 30 years ago, there were only 20 or 30 Florida panthers left, and that's not good. And they brought in panthers from Texas to help supplement this population, to help restore or recover the population. And it's been overall a really successful program. There's now probably somewhere over 100 Florida panthers, and the population's growing. So we try to understand why that was successful and what we need to watch out for in the future. And we call this kind of genetic rescue or genetic restoration. So what's most interesting now is there's a disease that's been spreading in throughout North America in our deer populations called chronic wasting disease. It's caused by a prion, which is really just a misfolded protein. And there's been a little bit of a concern that pumas or panthers or other carnivores, when they eat deer, might get this disease. And just recently, last summer, this disease was first reported in Florida. And so we were trying to see if Florida panthers might have a particular susceptibility to this disease if they start eating, deer infected with chronic wasting disease. And so we know that there's a gene that's linked to an individual's susceptibility. And so we sequenced the DNA of this gene in a bunch of Florida panthers, and we were able to kind of produce the results that show that the Florida panther is not any more or less susceptible than other panthers in North America, which is a really good thing because we know in the rest of the country, pumas, which is the same organism but in other parts of the country, can eat infected deer and not get sick. And so we think that the same pattern is going to happen here in Florida, is that we don't see any increased risk of Florida panthers to this disease. Again, it's this disease caused by an infectious protein, and it just misfolds and it causes other proteins to misfold, and it results in plaques in the brain. And it gets some of its name, its more scientific name is a spongiform encephalopathy. Fancy word, but it really means spongiform means spongy, encephalopathy means in the brain. So if there is an organism that died from this disease and they remove the brain, it will have a very spongy, some people will say like Swiss cheese-like result. It's almost like there are holes from these plaques in the brain. And so it leads to really kind of slow cognitive decline, and it can be quite debilitating, and it's pretty much always fatal. Monitoring these populations for susceptibility to wildlife diseases is a really important tool for managing and conserving, endangered, threatened, or any wild species.